All right, we're continuing for Bill 213 now with Senator Sabina Perez. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for this opportunity. So I'm hearing very closely, I'm following very closely the public testimony. And, I'm hearing that there definitely is a issue with, continuing reliable energy as well as promoting renewable energy. I think these are the two things that are really coming out ahead. Also, I have great concern about the compliance, the consent decree that Guam Power Authority has to achieve as well. So these issues are weighing on me very, very largely. And, I guess I would like to see, because I know there's also a mandate for 100% renewable energy by 2045. And, I did see I was looking over your presentation, Mr. Beneventi, in regards to achieving 50% renewable. And so basically, what I'm hearing is that the constraints of obtaining that amount is that there has to be some sort of backup energy source to, I guess, mitigate the fluctuations when it comes to nighttime usage, right? Because most of our renewable energy right now is due to solar power. Has GPA looked at viable sources that can perhaps renewable resources that can supplant fossil fuel burning power generated through fossil fuels? Is there a reliable renewable energy source for nighttime?
There are some options, but from what I can see, there's not many options for us other than solar PV at this time. Some other options that have been helping the nation and in Europe and other places have been wind energy. Unfortunately, our wind blows mostly trade winds blow between December and March. Thereafter, it's just substantially come down, and so wind could help us a little bit, but it's really not the one that's gonna get us to 50% or 100%. Solar PV can. What are other sources? Waste to energy will give us about 3% of our energy, with all the waste that could be burned and converted to energy. Other potentials are, another potential is, however, is just now being worked on to be commercially tested, is what is so and again, don't get spooked. I'm sorry, I was gonna say, please, I don't want to spook you, but they're called small nuclear modular units that doesn't have the plutonium waste that current nuclear plants have, and they come in like 50 megawatt models. And again, we've been following this for the past 10 years, and it's probably going to take another 10 to 15 years before it's really being commercially viable, run through the system, so to get all the bugs out. But again, that's another potential. Ocean thermal, that was one of the first things that came when I was a young engineer back in 1975. Ocean thermal was supposed to be our energy source. And again, to today, no one has commercially put out the ocean thermal. Reducing on a sustainable basis, deep sea air conditioning, could help reduce our load. We did that study about 15 years ago. Again, the military might look at that in the coming future, but again, that's still a resource that has to be vetted out more, and again, look at the feasibility on. So really, the integrated resource plan, Senator, and I will make sure we get you a copy, and of course the CCU will be hopefully passing that next week. Lays out our plan for this decade that shows that we will work towards achieving, and again, subject to the PUC approval, about 400 megawatts additional solar PV systems. Again, and we better work on utility scale and other opportunities, rooftops or others to make that happen. Right now, utility scale is the lowest cost. It's really like half the cost of a rooftop solar system. So the plan, the integrated resource plan that is will be passed by the CCU soon. Again, I don't want to be presumptuous, but indications are it will pass. Is adds 400 megawatts more, and that would make us achieve the 2035 mandate by 2030, the end of this decade. And that again, but is coupled with the Okudu power plant and the 41 megawatt as our backup and reserve. So the combination of all that is in the new integrated resource plan, plus about $230 million worth of investments that we will have to restudy and move forward on to allow renewables. In the study center, you also see that there are some circuits on the island that have too much solar PV at this point, which is actually impacting the quality of energy to non-solar customers. That's something that we're going to have to address soon, and will require probably batteries within those circuits to be able to make sure we get the quality of the electricity into the all customers in that area within the plus or minus 5% voltage, or what we call voltage range. Right now, some of them are as high as 125%, which is causing flicker, higher lighting in the area, and of course, could be detrimental to their equipment. So again, this is the growing pain. This is the process. We're committed to the mandate, and actually the integrated resource plan of 2022 is showing, will show the legislature and the community that this is where we're heading to achieve this. But we do need, the cornerstone of this is the Ukudu power plant, and of course the 41 megawatt provides additional savings for us.
Okay, thank you. You'd mentioned earlier that so the Marble Cave area, the solar farm there, should be up and running in April of this year. Is that correct?
Correct, Senator.
So then how much renewables will we have at that point?
At that point, you have that Marble, which is 60 megawatts, plus we have the 25 megawatts up at Dandan. We will have 85. Then the following year, by the end of December 2023, we have the Hanwha, which is another 60 megawatts coming on. We have one contract which is ready to be vetted for approval and award by the CCU and PUC. It's for about 40 to 50 megawatts on Navy land that we are leasing at no cost from them. And that unfortunately has been going through the protest process. It went to the OPA, and the OPA ruled in our favor that we did it correctly and it was fair to award that contract. But now it's in the Superior Court, and after hopefully the Superior Court rules in our favor, and we can get that on the line too around 2024, 2025. So those are already bids that happen, contracts that are in place. So the plan that I put together showing the numbers and the percentage of renewables and all of that, those are very, those are backed up by contracts and actions that are being taken today. So it's something that's going to be a reality if we stay the course.
Okay, and so what is a safe procedure for, so if we're generating about 145 megawatts of solar power as a backup energy source, what's the recommended amount?
I much early on, I also have a presentation that showed that if we go 100% renewables on this island, and we had to have a backup reserve without any conventional unit, for just 1 day of reserve, it will cost an additional 7 cents a kilowatt hour on your rate. 2 days will make it 14. 3 days will be 21 cents. So having solar PV and renewables as your backup source is very, very expensive. Now, I've also shown in the presentation that in 2019, in the month of September, I think 20 out of the 30 days, it rained. So therefore, 3 days of renewable backup reserve is not going to address that situation. The new power plant Okudu, if we did not generate a single kilowatt hour of energy as a backup for the system, will cost about 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And again, that's all you will be spending, 5 cents a kilowatt hour to have the backup, and you can add as much renewables as you want at a lower cost. So that's the feasibility, and those are the numbers that I've run and provided presentation are still true today at this point.
Yeah, so the other concern that I have is the Cabras 1 and 2, which provides, I think, the majority of our power needs. It's in its last leg. And I think in addition to the regulatory deadline, we really need to provide some sort of a reliability on that end. And so, yeah, my line of questioning was really, can we really, to what extent, have we really exhausted the possibility of relying more on renewable energy? Because one of the things is the loss of opportunities, right? As we are putting more money into, fossil fuel burning plants, perhaps there's less funding for these types of projects. So, I would like to get more information on that regarding, what is the opportunity cost?
Yeah, we can provide more information, but I think what we're also noting with the plan we put together is that it's the cheapest way to add more and more renewables, even with various lower reliability. The reliability of the 24/7, 365 days a year, whether it rains or a typhoon comes or whatever, will be provided by this fossil generator. And you put more and more renewables, so you don't depend on them more than as a backup. So the Okudu plan will continue, like I said, like I will note in the reports, we'll start out with about 75 to 80%, generating 75 or 80% of what it could generate. By 2030, you're looking somewhere around below 60%, the plan. So as more renewables come on, the consumption of fossil fuel by that plant backs off. And so therefore, when you get to 100%, it's basically then becomes just a zero and as a reserve only under extreme conditions. Now, one may say, okay, 2045, if it's a stranded asset, well, that's about 20 some years from now. So the new Okudu plan of today will be, a little over half of its life. So it really doesn't become a stranded asset anymore, but it's critical for us to maintain the quality of life we have today and to achieve and add more renewables on a sustainable basis so we can reduce our costs and at the same time reducing the dependence on fossil fuel. So that's kind of what that slide 14 and so indicate, and the new IRP. We're already moving towards the 50% mandated. The IRP mentions for sure why it was developed. It was developed towards achieving the 50% renewable at the lowest cost possible. for the ratepayers. But the cornerstone of that is the Ukudu plan. Because the converse of that, everything is like, again, like Attorney Ricky mentioned her, everything is just dire. And I couldn't have said it any better than he did.
The other concerns, of course, environmental concerns are also foremost in my mind. And with regards to power plants, obviously, it's one of those things where you don't want to build in your own backyard, right? Like landfills, and mitigating those environmental concerns too is what is the least impactful. Are these so of course US EPA is the one that's permitting it, or at least now it's Guam EPA would be in charge of that under US EPA's oversight. But this bill is seeking an exemption to place a power plant within 1,500 foot radius of a school. And I'm sure US EPA is looking at this, but regarding, because children are, one of our most vulnerable populations, are the standards stringent enough, when it comes to this particular project is one of my concerns.
The standards are, again, in my opinion, very stringent. No, and again, one red line was we couldn't operate Cabras 1 and 2 and PT.2 and 9 through April 2023 unless we met the new ambient air quality standards. So as it was mentioned earlier, we are converting PT.2 and 9 from burning that 2% residual fuel oil to ultra low sulfur diesel. We're spending $15 million, and the production out of that plant is going to increase by 30%. No, we're changing, excuse me, Cabras 1 and 2 from the high sulfur 2% sulfur. That will be burning 0.2%, very expensive low sulfur residual fuel oil by the end of this year. So all of that is really to meet the ambient air quality standard, which of course is for everyone, no? And therefore it substantially improve the environment and safe for everyone. In addition, again, Senator, the trade winds over towards the school, it was like 3% of the year of maximum. And again, it didn't specifically say 3% when the school students are, but worst case 3% heading inland. And again, when the trade winds are blowing inland, that fume is blowing beyond the island. So I'm quite assured that we're not endangering the kids that are over there. Most especially, so the diesel that we're using is the same diesel that the buses uses, and are over there picking up the kids. The kids are passing by, doing everything everywhere. So it's really the same fuel, which is the cleanest the cleanest diesel that is on the market today.
Okay, I appreciate the responses. I think, if there's any way that we can maximize the renewable use of renewable energy, I mean, if we can rely on that more so, I do have concerns about this being that it's situated next to a school. And yeah, I maybe perhaps I can, if I have any further questions, I'll definitely bring it to the chair as well as the GPA. Well, thank you for your responses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Are there any other senators online right now? I know there were some, but I think some have dropped off. Please speak up now if there's any other senator. I'm just looking around. I don't see anyone else, but in case I miss you, please speak up. If not, I will allow Senator Agustin to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone that participated and testified. Thank you, GPA, and for the PUC representative, Attorney Areki. And, you know, I've listened to all the testimony. And with that, I'll ask the chair committee to consider all their testimony and place it in the committee report. And then hopefully it'll see its way to the floor. And then we can debate that heavily and consider all the recommendations that have been placed forward. Because we all have to remind ourselves that number one, you need reliable energy in order to pick up the renewable energy. And when a storm comes, let's hope that the solar panels are all still up, because the power plants will more than likely still be up. It's like a concrete home. They'll still be standing. Everything else attached to it will be gone. And with that note, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing the bill, and we'll move forward to the next one. It's already after 1. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. If there are no further questions or comments, this concludes our discussions on Bill 213-36 COR. We will recess for 5 minutes before we proceed with discussions on Bill 212-36 COR. Afternoon, good afternoon. This virtual public hearing will now reconvene for the committee to hear and accept testimony on bill number 212-36 COR, an act to approve the terms and conditions of the Guam Power Authority revenue bonds to refund outstanding Guam Power Authority revenue bonds introduced by Senator Joe S. San Agustin. We'll now proceed with discussions on bill 212-36 COR. I begin with giving the floor to Senator San Agustin to present his sponsor statement.
Buenas and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to provide this statement. This proposal was introduced at the request and for support by the Guam Power Authority to refund their outstanding revenue bond as an avenue to achieve ratepayer savings and improve services. GPA's 2012 Series A bonds are currently at a 5% interest rate with 265.08 million callable beginning on October 2022. With interest rates at a historic low with strong triple tax exemption bond desires in the bond market, this presents very favorable bond refunding opportunities. Additionally, GPA is seeking terms and conditions for the proposed refunding that will be at least 2% less than the present value of debt service on the prior bonds, and that the final maturity of the refunding shall not exceed the final maturity of the latest maturing then outstanding revenue bonds. With refunding and restructuring the 2012 bonds, GPA may maximize an annual cash flow savings of almost 15.3 million beginning in 2024. This is an opportune time for us to consider savings that will be realized for those revenue bonds. I ask my colleagues to consider this proposal. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill. And I look forward to hearing the testimonies from GPA and our people in our hearing today. Jesus Masi.
Thank you, Senator San Agustin. Again, we'll begin now with public testimony, going in order of how people signed in or how they requested to participate. So first is Mr. Sedfrey Linsongan, and then that'll be followed by Mr. Fred Harecki, and then Mr. John Beneventi. So Mr. Linsongan, you are recognized. Please unmute. I believe you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sedfrey Linsongan, concerned citizen. Yes, I am supporting this bill, but with condition. So many times I read bills to borrow bonds, but did the agency pass it to the people? That's my main concern. Or will it be passed to their mistakes in handling the procurement? Just like, for example, this KEPCO transferring the 41 megawatt to PT, and we have to pay like 4.25 million a year. That could total almost 52 million or 106 million in 25 years. You know, that's my concern, because these two bills are related. You know, they had good intention. Yes, you can save 50 million. Yeah, but what you gonna do with it? Will you just keep it or pass it to the people? Because regarding the intention of the bill, it is to benefit the taxpayers. So how we gonna get the benefits from this bond? GPA have to answer on this one. And just like in our area going to Route 3, there's no street lights, very dark. That's how you benefit the taxpayer. You install street lights, but only to some villages that have a connection with GPA. And then second, because it's related to 213, it already 2 years, senators, and nothing has been done to process this major permit. I read that it would only take 1.5 years. So what happened with the 2 years? 2019, 2020, 2021, and now we're talking 2022. GPA is silent, KEPCO is silent for 2 years, no action. Don't tell me about COVID only. You know, it could have been processed already, the major permit, and we should not be discussing this PT power plant. And the reason that no alternative. Oh, come on. There's no such thing as no alternative. There's no alternative site. That's unbelievable. Did you conduct a study? Where's the study? There's so many places here in Guam. And besides, what happened with the 2 years? You know, that's my concern, Senator. Because you're gonna save some money, but what they gonna do with it? Just pay KEPCO with this illegal contract that I'll say, and don't listen with this unmitigated disaster. You know, the federal government or justice government will listen to us because it's not our fault. It's the contractor. And the condition here in our island, we're number 1 in the nation in terms of disease. There's already strong evidence that one of the causes from the power plant. You know, check the hospital rates, especially we are now in COVID pandemic, and it caused the respiratory condition, and that's what the power plant close to the school will bring. That's why it is important that they gave us an itemization how we're gonna benefit on this, and conduct a study about alternative site, or else just terminate the contract and liquidate KEPCO for 1.25 million a day, as specified in the 15% bid ban. You know, then we can, at least we have that money. You want to earn money? Okay, implement the LD. Or I'm afraid that you waive the 15% bid ban. You know, I'm already hungry. That's why I talk like this. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, that's why. And besides, the 41 megawatt is only standby. You know, it's only, and now you're making that assessment that it would benefit the people of Guam because it could be used. That's an acceptable argument. Besides that, we already lost 24 megawatt instead of 65. Now, you know, we're gonna have to pay more money.
I'm sorry if you could keep your testimony confined to Bill 212. I understand, and I did mention previously the two bills are interrelated, but if you could keep your comments to 212, and then if you're going to mention the 213, then it has to be connected to how that's connected to 212. And you're talking more about environmental concerns at this point, and I want to make sure that the testimony is confined more to Bill 212.
Because these were not addressed by everybody during the 213 testimony. That's why it's very important I bring it up, because it would it will cause savings to the people of Guam by not going into this transferring of the 41 megawatt to PT. Anyway, that's my point, Senator. What they gonna do with the savings? Will they pass it to the people, to the ratepayers, give rebates or something? That's all. That's the point. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Linsongan, for your testimony. Next is Mr. Fred Harecki, Chief Administrative Law Judge, Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you, Chairperson Ridgell, sponsor Senator San Agustin, and the other members of the Guam Legislature. I'm Fred Harecki, the Administrative Law Judge for the PUC, and presenting this testimony on behalf of the PUC and its acting chairperson, Peter Montanola. First, Mr. Linsongan brought up an appropriate point about what happens to the savings. And I think GPA knows, and the PUC certainly knows, we have a discussion after the refunding is finished. And we did this in 2000 with regard to the 2010 bond refunding. The PUC actually works with GPA to determine how the savings will be used. And in a docket back around 2017, I believe, the PUC actually worked with GPA to specify what particular uses the refunding would be put to. And that included at that time such things as promoting the environmental program in the schools, that is reducing energy usage, and some other factors. But the PUC is quite active in making sure that those refundings are used for the benefit of the public. With regard to this bill, the PUC and its acting chairman, Montanola, definitely support the enactment of the bill. And we think overall that GPA should definitely be given the opportunity to proceed with its refunding. Time is probably something of the essence here, because as the testimony points out, earlier in July of this year, GPA had actually come to the PUC to try to request approval of this refunding of the 2012 revenue bonds. But the PUC was unable to act at that time because there was no legislation. And the PUC, of course, it's an administrative agency, so it's always taken the position that it can't act on such a request for a bond refunding until there's legislation. So in the order in that docket, the PUC indicated that it would not consider the approval at that time, but could reconsider again after there were legislation approving the refunding. Now, as GPA aptly points out, time is of the essence here, because we already do know that there are indications from the Federal Reserve about raising interest rates even as early as March. So it's very concerning to get this moving as quickly as possible before interest rates go up. So I think GPA is absolutely right that this is a opportune, in fact, a critical moment, really, to consider approval of this legislation. And as Mr. Benavente has indicated, this refunding is a part of the overall plan to reduce rates. That is, to have additional savings for the ratepayers. So this kind of goes along part and parcel with what was being discussed with regard to Bill 213. At this point in time, GPA has provided what I would call credible information of substantial savings by this refunding. They pointed to a figure of as much as 15.3 million per year from 2024 through 2030. And they've also submitted a report from their underwriters, the Bank of America, Wells Fargo, indicating different scenarios of how this refunding could be structured and what the potential savings would be. The PUC, of course, could not take a formal position this time saying, yes, we approve the refunding, because there's a process that has to occur here. The process is the legislature first authorizes refunding, subject to approval by the Consolidated Commission, by the governor, by the PUC. GPA is working with GITA in the meantime to get the appropriate terms and conditions. So that process has to be gone through. And then, of course, the PUC is usually the last step in the process. Once all the other entities have acted and approved, then the matter comes to the PUC for its review. And I would have to say that the PUC has in the past, I think GPA would agree, been fairly exacting and demanding with regard to bond refundings. And PUC has not always agreed that the savings from a refunding were sufficient. So there have been some instances where PUC, at least temporarily, denied a bond refunding until GPA could indicate that there were substantial savings. And that same process, of course, would be followed here. But I think that probably lawyers would call this a prima facie case. GPA has come forward. They've presented facts to indicate that there will be big benefits to the ratepayers. And I have to say, I can say that the projected benefits here are much higher than those were for the 2010 bond refunding. So in my mind, most definitely, GPA has earned the opportunity to proceed ahead with the process and to justify that its refunding will meet the applicable requirements. Senator San Agustin mentioned the 2% savings in debt service reduction. Of course, that has to be met. And then the PUC would look at the terms and conditions applied by the legislature and the law to determine whether overall it could support the refunding. As I said, the preliminary information looks quite good and promising about having substantial results here. Otherwise, I think the proposed legislation covers all the applicable matters. The approval of the entities that I mentioned, possibility of rate savings, and it seems that the legislation is fairly standard in terms of what the legislature has passed previously to authorize bond refundings. So on the basis of all of those factors, and certainly the need for expeditious action, the PUC does support this bill and respectfully requests that the senators of the committee support the bill and that the legislature also enact legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurecki. Again, for the record, was this testimony you provided on behalf of the PUC? You kind of mentioned something that confused me. You
Yes.
said that the PUC is the last step in the process. So
That's right.
would it be premature for you to present testimony on behalf of the PUC?
Well, not really. If you see from the testimony, it's very careful to say, again, that the PUC cannot approve the issuance right now. I think what this
But
testimony
you
is
can
saying,
testify in favor of it right now. That's what I'm
in favor of the legislation, but it's not approving the bond issuance yet. It's saying to proceed with the process. And to proceed with the process at all, you need the legislation. The PUC can't act at all. It requires two things. First of all, legislation. And secondly, there has to be an actual petition that is filed with the PUC asking for approval of the particular bond issuance. And I would say not all the details of this bond issuance are yet finally resolved. The Bank of America proposals, for example, contain 3 different scenarios where there are different ways you could structure the savings. One would be a uniform structure where the 15 million would apply for every year. But then there were some other scenarios, 2 other scenarios, which spread the savings out for perhaps even for a longer period of time. So there's some issues like that that aren't resolved. And that's why the PUC here is not approving a specific bond issuance, only saying that GPA has shown enough to warrant the opportunity to proceed ahead.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
All right, next to testify is John Beneventi, GM of the Guam Power Authority.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, again, I'd like to thank Senator San Agustin for introducing and sponsoring this bill at our request. Secondly, thank you again for the public hearing on Bill 212. And Senators in attendance, please thank you for spending all this time on these 2 very important bills for us. My name is John Beneventi, General Manager of the Guam Power Authority. I am pleased to offer our testimony in support of Bill 212-36 as introduced. GPA continuously evaluates its operation and finances to identify issues that will yield improved service and cost savings for its ratepayers. Restructuring certain revenue bonds is one of those avenues to achieve ratepayer savings and improve service. If passed, Bill 212-36 will help GPA garner savings for Guam's ratepayers. Bond interest rates have been very favorable for refinancing. This is evident from the recent Government of Guam bond activity, wherein this government issued 6 bonds at very favorable interest rates and very well received by the bond market. Inflation rates are rising, and the Federal Reserve Bank has hinted that interest rates would increase in 2022. Therefore, GPA must act immediately to refinance its 2012 bond at a lower interest rate for the benefits of the ratepayer. GPA has 3 outstanding revenue bonds totaling approximately 503 million. Its 2012 Series A bond is callable in 2022, while the 2014 and 2017 bonds are not callable until 2024 and 2027 respectively. GPA has seen proposals from 2 major underwriters, both indicating GPA could refinance its 5% bond at around 3.2%, resulting in reduced annual debt service payments by about $15 million. That's annually, no? These potential outcomes were estimated by GPA's new underwriters, Bank of America and Wells Fargo, are not compliant with the mandate benchmark with bond refinancing is authorized. Our 2012 Series A bonds have an outstanding principal of $285.8 million at an interest rate of 5%, with $265.1 million callable beginning October 1st, 2022. The revenue bond interest rates are at a historic low, and the bond market appetite for triple tax exempt bonds remains strong, presenting favorable bond refinancing environment. The restructuring of these 2012 bonds can maximize GPA's annual cash flow savings of approximately $15.1 million beginning 2024 to 2030. Federal tax law restricts the tax-exempt funding of these bonds to no earlier than 90 days prior to the call date on July 3rd, 2022 for GPA's 2012 bonds. Interest rates, however, can be secured now on a forward delivery basis for a rate premium of approximately 5 basis points per month. The refunding, which is with a projected total interest cost of 3.2%, will result in approximately $15.3 million in net present value savings levelized GPA's debt service through 2024. Upon receiving legislative approval and Governor Longorero's concurrence by signing of this bill into law, GPA will proceed with the 2012 bond refinancing. The matter will then go before the Guam Public Utilities Commission for consideration and approval. Once all necessary approvals are achieved, GPA will work quickly with GETCA to achieve the maximum savings through this refunding. The bond refinancing is one of several approaches to increase ratepayer savings and lower power bills by 2025. The failure to refinance the bonds will negatively impact power rates in the near future. It is for these reasons that GPA is before you today, requesting for authorization to proceed on this measure. Our ratepayers deserve the lowest possible utility rates, and this cost-reducing opportunity is one we cannot afford to miss. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Benavente. Next, Rick Unpinko. I'm not sure if Mr. Unpinko is still online. I know he was here in the morning. I do not see him online, Mr. Unpinko. If you are there, please speak up. I don't see you. If not, we will move on to Mr. Victor Torres, Engineer 3, GPA.
Buenas, Chairman Ridgell and committee members. Again, my name is Victor Torres, Mechanical Engineer at Guam Power Authority. Bill 212 will allow us to take advantage of historically low revenue bond interest rates. If passed, GPA and the Guam Economic Development Authority will proceed with our refunding effort of 2012A bonds to maximize savings for our customers. This is especially important in today's economy where the price of everything is increasing. Our ratepayers can use savings on their electricity bill to pay for more important things such as gas, groceries, or medical expenses. As Mr. Benavente mentioned, time is of the essence. We don't want to be a day late and $15.3 million short. It's a no-brainer. I strongly support this bill. Situs Maasi.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Next, Ronald Okada. I don't see Mr. Okada online right now, but in case I'm missing you somehow, please speak up if you're there, Mr. Okada. If not, we'll move on. Next, Lourdes Nicholas. And again, I don't see Lourdes Nicholas online at this time. In case I'm missing you, please speak up. We also have Kenneth Chargaloff, who signed up, but I think he provided testimony in the morning on the other bill, but I don't see him here now. Former Speaker Judy Wampat. I do not see the Speaker Wampat, so Melanie Mendiola, CEO Administrator of GITA. I don't see her by Tina.
Yes, I apologize, Senator.
problem.
We have a GITA board meeting that started at 1:30, so I'm here to read Mel's testimony.
No problem.
Today, Senator Ridgell, Speaker Tulahi, and members of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy Utilities, and the Arts. I'd like to hear and submit this testimony supporting Bill number 212-36. The Guam Economic Development Authority, in its role as the Central Financial Manager and consultant for the government of Guam, monitors and advises the government when the market conditions are attractive for refunding for a bond or, in some cases, lease financings. The 2012 Guam Power Authority bonds have a current call date of October 1, 2022, with the earliest date for current refunding of July 5th, 2022. As we approach the call date with a goal to take advantage of federal interest rates at record lows, GITA has worked with GPA on options to refinance their bonds based on the financial condition. Based on recent financial analysis, the use of tax-exempt forward delivery refunding will result in approximately 15.3 mil in net present value savings, or about 5.34%, if we can get to the market in the next 60 days or prior to the anticipated federal rate increase in the coming months. The primary advantage of this advanced refunding is that GPA would be able to lock in savings ahead of the next debt service payment. GovGuam would issue a forward delivery refunding priced between March and April on the outstanding callable 2012 bonds to achieve lower interest rates of approximately 3.17. With this refunding, GPA will be able to structure its debt service payment to be smoothed out for the remaining 22 years. When this legislature authorized the advanced refunding last May 2021, Guam was able to secure over $63 million in general fund savings with the 2021 business privilege tax refunding. The strong market demand allowed GovGuam to lower yields by as much as 26 basis points from the start of pricing, with the all-in borrowing cost for the government set at 2.96%, by far the lowest ever for a GovGuam financing, with the final maturity of at least 5 years. We note that the proposed financing scenario assumes a slight extension of the current maturity, but not exceeding the latest maturing outstanding bonds. By doing this, we will be able to realize an average annual cash flow savings of $15.1 million per year over the next 10 years. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to provide this comment in support of the immediate passage of Bill number 212-36. Should you have any questions, please contact me at 671-647-4332 or via email. Sizus Maasi, Melanie Mendiola.
Thank you for the testimony read on behalf of Ms. Mendiola. Is there anyone else here to testify on Bill 212? That's all I have on my sign-in sheet, but I do see other people still logged on, and I'm not sure if any of you are here to provide testimony, so please speak up at this time. If not, we will conclude the public testimony portion on this bill, and we'll go now to the questions portion. I do have some questions to start out with. This particular bill, there has been said 15 million in average savings, but my understanding is that's not over the term of the entire bond borrowing. That's 15 million in average savings from 2024 to 2030. And that was also represented in testimony today. That means that you won't save 15 million after 2030. So after 2030, the loan is not going to save as much. In fact, currently the bond would be retired in 2034. So instead, this bond borrowing measure, if passed, would extend this particular bond by another 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. That is the scenario we proposed.
Also, according to the payment schedule that I've received, now I'm not sure if there's some other payment schedules that are out there, but the only thing I've currently received shows that over the total term of the bond borrowing, we will actually pay 27.6 million more than we would have had we not refinanced. Is that correct?
Yes, by extending, you would pay a little bit more in debt service.
So my question for GPA is, why not just pay off the existing bonds rather than borrowing again and increasing not only the term of the bond, but the total amount that we will pay in the long run by 27.6 million?
Senator, again, as was noted earlier in my testimony, we're really looking for, there are different scenarios for savings, no? And but our request for refinancing does meet the government of Guam benchmarks as set up, and obviously it really looks very, very promising for savings for our ratepayers. Those are the decisions that will be brought to the PUC, who actually set the rates for the customers. And again, whatever savings, or in this case, refinancing, we need the authority on. So we will deliberate all of those different scenarios. The reason for the structuring of the debt the way it is to provide the ratepayers of today a much better savings in their total bill, because again, as I mentioned much earlier in the previous testimony, the life of the equipment goes out 20 years or more. So therefore, what you would like to do is have everyone pay for their fair share of the equipment during the year that they use it. So therefore, by levelizing it out over a longer period of time, you're able to provide more savings to the customers of today. So if you can try and get more, one huge block of savings, but then your debt service doesn't go down $15 million. It only goes down maybe 5 million. So therefore, the ratepayers of today for the next 10 years will continue to pay $10 million more every year. Whereas the scenario that we have set up, based on the life of the equipment, based on everyone paying their fair share of the use of the equipment, we're levelizing it so it does that. So that's the scenario that we had looked at and were to present to the PUC, who actually, in our case, has their final decision as to how to use the refinancing dollars and to again impact what rate scenario for our customers. However, like Attorney Ricky mentioned, we can begin to petition the PUC to help us to make to either agree to a recommendation or have other alternatives until we have the authority to go out to refinance. And the benchmark again has been, if we can do 2% net present value savings or all of that, then usually the legislature will authorize to proceed, and then we immediately head to the PUC for their review and approval, and because they at the end determine what the rates that the customers will pay. And again, so So they, like you mentioned, there's 3 different scenarios that could be looked at, but they're all indicating net present value savings that are above, substantially and actually above the benchmark.
Can you explain net present value?
Net present value is when you look at the series of costs and over the 20-year period, you try and bring all that cost or savings and etc. back to today's dollars and determine to show what that is, no? So that in fact it is a savings or it's a negative, it's costing you more. So not, you know, as part again, that's basically what a net present value is.
Senator,
Yes.
if I could add to the conversation.
Please.
Again, my name is Tina Garcia, Public Finance Manager. I've been working with the GITA bond financing for over 20 years. Yes, we normally frown on extending maturities, but because the current interest rates are at very, very low levels where it's near zero, even by extending out, we are not only lowering the annual debt service at a net present value as stated, we're taking out about $285.8 million worth of bonds with $231 million today. And again, because of the low interest rates, we're able to borrow at a lower amount and extend that out. And because of the recent performance we've had, in all, by doing this, we lower the outstanding debt for GPA. We levelize their debt service, I think in the next 10 years, as presented in Mr. Beneventi's presentation, they're going to be paying close to $50 million a year from 2024 to 2030. We're taking that number closer to 30 million, and that'll be for the next from 2024 to 2044. So again, we're just trying to make it financially stable and flat going forward. Net present value, again, is the cost of borrowing money today versus what it's worth, you know, if we didn't do anything.
I understand the leveling out, and you're saying flat, right?
Yes.
But if it retires in 2034, after 2034, it drops.
If we didn't do anything today, or if we just retired the current bonds, it goes from about 44 million and it drops to about 30, you know, to the level we're at. But by doing this refinancing, we're kind of leveling it out so that as GPA brings on the new equipment, retires the old, it kind of gives them cash flow relief to allow them to make all these changes without impacting rates.
So my question is, why not just refinance and take advantage of the good rates, but without extending the current term? Wouldn't that save more money?
Yes, it would save more money. But I think the other thing that we're trying to do here for GPA is provide cash flow relief. Again, by just refunding, doing a straight refunding, you're reducing the annual debt service by 5 million, and then paying it off in 2034. If we do this proposed scenario, which again extends the maturity because of the low interest rates, we're still able to achieve all our goals of meeting our minimum and net present value savings, providing cash flow to GPA for the upcoming cycle, and then just giving them a little bit more of a breathing room to be able to provide the best service for financially.
My question for GPA is, what do you need cash flow relief for?
As I mentioned earlier, Senator, the lower the cash flow requirement, the lower our debt payments are every year. So therefore, we can achieve higher savings today The same, if you leave it the way it is, then okay, the savings is gonna occur in 20, 30 some years, you know? So I, as a ratepayer or somebody is not gonna be here in by 2030, I'm paying for all that investment, which they are gonna appreciate. By leveling it out, we're gonna drop what we're paying per year, beginning in 2024. So then that could be used again in totality with the new power plant and everything else. If that doesn't enter to the equation, that could be used for more capital investment in the system. It's just again, that's part of the utility structuring of cost, so that you try to you issue bonds over the life of the minimum life of the equipment, so that you can have everyone pay their fair share of that. So again, if we don't, you know, you can take all these cash savings up, more cash savings up front, but then you're going to be paying a higher loan amount in 2024. Instead of paying 32 million, you'll be still paying about 40 some million dollars a year. So again, there's an opportunity loss of that much money that you can invest on everything else. Plus, you know, try to make sure that we keep the rates from down and never coming up. As you know, we haven't raised the rates since about 2012, 2013. And with the base rate has been staying there. We've been living within the means we have. Future low growth comes in, all of those could provide additional savings to our consumer. Because now we have we're handling the expenses by restructuring our debts and lowering them by bringing in more efficient equipment, which translates to higher fuel savings. Therefore, a net savings, greater net savings to the customers of today, and most especially today and over the next 10 years. No?
So basically, the scenario I've seen, and you mentioned there are other scenarios, and that's sort of the questions I'm asking, why not go with the other scenarios? The scenario I've seen that you guys are proposing is the one that extends the term out by 10 years. And my concern with that is, you know, I understand you're saying, you know, save more up front, basically, but then the problem is you pay more on the back end. It's like a balloon payment on a adjustable rate mortgage loan or an ARM mortgage, right? You know, where people borrow money for their houses. It looks great in the first few years, the first whatever 10 years, they're paying low monthly payments on their mortgage, and then towards the end of the mortgage, huge balloon payments. And that's what I'm seeing in this schedule here. In fact, the debt service goes up to 27 million in the last 4 years, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken, whereas there would be zero debt service if we retired this in 2034 as per the current maturity date. So again, I'm still wondering why structure it this way, where we're putting balloon payments on the back end, and we would save more altogether, even according to Ms. Garcia. If we just stuck with the current maturity date, we would actually save more money altogether. We wouldn't, we would save more money altogether. We wouldn't be paying 27.6 million more in total.
And again, it's to levelize and minimize the costs of consumers today and provide that everyone pays their fair share of the equipment and the infrastructure that is under this bonds. No, the other thing though is like later on when you're paying, you're not actually increasing your cost. If you notice, we're levelizing it all throughout the line. So whatever you're paying today, that mortgage stays for the term of the program. See, and again, whereas okay, if it was your home and my home, okay, perhaps right, it's only us that are either paying or receiving the savings. But when you have 50,000 consumers that could change in any one particular time, you want everyone to pay their fair share of that equipment throughout that period of time. And again, we're trying to minimize the burden on the consumers of today and over the next several years to accomplish this, as we have the opportunity to get in more growth, more revenues, which again reduces the potential impact of rate increases to accomplish this. But again, we couldn't, we're just working that way. And of course, all of this will be vetted, Senator, with the PUC really that has the final authority, whether yes, we'll do it this way or any of the other three scenarios. We just want to, again, have the authorization to proceed so we can vet this and have a decision made by the PUC, of course.
CCU
Senator,
resolution.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, may I just add
ahead.
one more thing to that? Although total debt service will go up a little bit, the cost to extend the additional 10 years, give GPA the cash flow they need to transition to the new generators, will only be about 3.6 mil in additional borrowing. And by doing that, not only are we able to achieve a 5% net present value savings, we're also taking out more debt from 265 mil to 285 mil. And again, this is all because of the low interest rate environment that and the triple tax exemption that the GPA bond would have. These again are what we would hope are conservative scenarios, and so we hope to beat this when we go to market. But just because of that, we're borrowing just a little bit more by adding the 10 years.
Okay. CCU Resolution 2021-08 states on line 13 that GPA has been, quote, pursuing strategies for reducing debt service payments, which would be a significant assistance in paying for capacity payment of the new power plant. So does this mean that this whole refinancing effort is being pursued in order to afford the payments on the new power plant? I thought the new power plant is supposed to save money. And if it's supposed to save money, then why does GPA need, quote, significant assistance in paying for capacity payment of the new power plant?
So in the docket for the new power plant, and again, the PUC grilled us substantially as to how are we going to pay for this new power plant without raising the rates, or what impact will this have on the ratepayer. So we came up with all the different scenarios to make this, to accomplish this. Again, we have to pay for a new power plant. And so we're alleviating all of this. We're putting all of this different pluses and minuses in to come up with the ratepayer savings at the end once the new power plant goes on. So the various alternatives to maximize the savings to the ratepayers in 2025 is one, refinancing of this bond. Two, the high efficiency of the Okudu plan with always fuel savings is the second equation, part of the equation. The third part of the equation is that we're going to have cost savings from the shutdown and retirement of Cabras 1 and 2, from the O&M, capital investments, all of that. The next savings would be the retirement of other units. So when you take all of this together, and again, many times we were at the PUC, and there was a look at there's going to be a need to adjust the base rate a little bit, and coming from the fuel cost savings. Many times we have said we will try to achieve where we don't even have to increase the base rate to adjust and take some more of the fuel savings to pay for that, so that we can maximize the rate, the savings that's going back to the ratepayers. So again, this is all part of the total strategy to make this happen. And it is true that we are going to provide substantial savings to the ratepayers when this unit comes on the line. And these are all the different alternatives that we considered. So we cannot take one or the other in itself and say, okay, this is not good or good. The whole combination of cutting of costs, to refinancing, to retirement of units, to not paying anymore for a substantial amount of fuel tanks to keep our oil into. All of those are going to come together and will be shown to the PUC as originally shown in our docket to request the PUC to approve the new power plant, which it has. No? So again, this is all part of the plan. It's all part of the docket. It's all part of the record of the PUC, and we GPA made a promise to try to keep that base rate where it is, and we continue to look for ways to cut expenses to make that happen. And upfront, we also mentioned the refinancing of this bonds alone. And again, it's better than what we were thinking, and of course that will help again in providing more savings to the ratepayers. So that's the total picture that it's in the docket before on the new power plant with the PUC.
So this bond refinancing proposal, as was mentioned, it's to alleviate some cash flow issues by reducing debt service up front. But that sounds to me like operational expenses. You know, isn't it typically more prudent to borrow money for capital improvements as opposed to borrowing money for operations?
Well, it's not a operational. Well, maybe let's put it this way. So what we're doing is paying a lower annual payment on the capital investments that we have made, no? And another way to see it is that we're taking that capital investment savings and putting it towards the capital investment of the new plan, no, so that we don't increase the base rate. The base rate may have to come up.
So it is to pay for the new plan.
The base rate may have to come up a little bit, and the fuel savings, will help offset and cover the cost of the new power plant. I'm just saying the total savings to the ratepayer is a combination of all of this. So this is not going to operations. The $15 million is going to go towards the new power plant investment and total savings, which is going to all go back to the ratepayers. Without that, then we will continue to pay the $15 million with no additional benefit. It's like an opportunity lost. It's like money in the bank if we just go and refinance. And again, that final decision, whether we're paying it for the power plant or give it back to the ratepayers, or do that will be vetted out. But we got to get to the market and appreciate getting the savings for our ratepayers. Once we have that savings, we can continue to debate what it be used for. No, but right now it's all part of the plan for when the new power plant and everything comes in to maximize the savings that is going to be provided back to the ratepayers.
But again, you could still achieve savings. In fact, more savings overall in total if you refinanced and took advantage of the better interest rates today, but kept it within the same maturity date. In other words, not extending the term and not borrowing more money. Isn't that correct?
And I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think that's the best interest of the ratepayers today.
It's
So you
not
can
in the
have-
best interest to save more money, but with a different,
No,
can you please
no more
explain
money
how it's
is
not in the
like,
best interest?
there's
save
like
more
getting
money.
all this cash today, and then tomorrow I'm gonna have to be paying still high debt service coverage. See? So
Right, and when you extend the term of the
and
thing, you're gonna be
then-
paying a balloon payment in the
and
end.
then I'm buying a car, which I could hardly, buying a car that everybody will have the right to use down the road, not my own car. No, So again, it's gotta be, that's my presentation of my logic as to why this is it, and I believe it provides the best ratepayer savings, no? But again, I'm not the final authority on that, and that would have to be, again, decided at the end by the Public Utility Commission, of course, CCU Public Utilities Commission. I just want to have the opportunity to head to the market and secure these savings. And again, we will know before we head out which scenario, 1, 2, or 3, because we would have had the PUC approval before we went out to the market. See, we can't go out to the market until the PUC approves.
Would you be opposed to us putting the specific scenario into the legislation, meaning the scenario that does not extend beyond the current maturity date?
Yes, I won't be opposed to that scenario. That's not the position I recommend. Again, I'm not the final authority to do that. But secondly, I would just like to say that, I mean, it's a fine line. Who determines what is best in rates for the ratepayers? As per all the bond indentures, the PUC is the authority that determines what are the rates for the ratepayers, no? And if this savings can provide what the PUC believes under their policy is the best for the ratepayers, then I don't think we should put specific legislation, and I stand to be chastised for this, but with the authorization to go out and maximize the savings that we can get. And again, we won't be going out to the market until the PUC approves whichever scenario. But at least I've been trying to maximize the rate savings, the cost for the consumers of today and over the next 10 years, no? And then it doesn't increase the debt payment from the 10 years to the next following 10 years. See, that it just means that instead of paying, we're paying 32, instead of it going to 15, they're only paying no more than 32. It's just levelized throughout the period of time. So again, I can say this and that, but I don't have the final call on that, Senator. I just know that we just don't want complications, if any, from, and maybe Tina can mention whether, what bond councils and all of that have to say as we move this forward. Because again, they are the indentures of the bonds that make it very clear who decides rates and all of this on scenarios like this and all that. So that's just as best I can, as Mr. Chairman, provide that information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benavente. I don't want to drag this out too long, so I'll go ahead and now open the floor to my other colleagues. I only see Speaker Terlahi. Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for your testimony. Yeah, I wanted to just follow up on some of those questions. First of all, so I see, of course, Mr. Benavente, thank you for being here. And it was Victor Torres, who was the engineer who testified earlier, and from GPA, right? And I don't see any board member or CCU member here at this hearing, but the reason I'm asking is because, so the promises sound attractive, of course, if we can achieve savings in refinancing. You, Mr. Benavente, said that we can reduce rates. Hopefully by 2025, we can minimize the impact of the fuel increases on ratepayer bills. And we all want that. And we also heard from Mr. Harecki that the PUC is the one actually who's going to oversee how exactly GPA does that. But I think that the legislature should have a very clear picture of whether that's really going to happen or not, and how exactly is that going to happen. So for example, we did a refinancing last term. It was just in the 34th. So Public Law 3469 was passed on December 5th, 2017, and it authorized some refinancing. And that refinancing was completed just a few days later on December 20th, 2017. But that law, Public Law 3469, required that GPA notify the legislature within 60 days of refinancing of its intent and plan regarding the savings achieved from the refinancing. I think this was an amendment that I put into the refinancing bill. It was a subsection 8 that says savings from refunding shall be utilized specifically for the benefit of the ratepayers. GPA shall notify the legislatura within 60 days of refinancing of its intent and plan regarding the savings achieved from refinancing. Because we say it and it goes in the media that, oh, this is going to help ratepayers, but we really want to have some way of directly accounting for that. And I know it's complex how PUC determines, ratepayer savings and that they might attribute several factors, but I think it's fair that the legislature requires that if you're saying these savings from this refinancing are going to help ratepayers, that we can show that very directly. The problem that I have is that when that law was passed, I didn't see any plan submitted to the legislature. I saw a letter on February 28, 2018, received by the Speaker, BJ Cruz at that time, that said, that was from Mr. Benavente at GPA, that says, the refinancing was completed in December 2017 and GPA's plan should be filed by February 2018. The CCU is meeting this week for its work session and next week for the CCU meeting to discuss GPA's proposals. Therefore, GPA would request an additional 30 days to notify a legislature regarding its plan for the refinancing savings. I cannot find that GPA plan sent to the legislature, but it sounds like, and so I don't want to say that type of thing is okay. That if the legislature puts in a requirement that it's okay for GPA to kind of blow it off, or and not submit its plan. If it did and I can't find it, then my error, and I would like to see a copy of that because I'd like to compare it to the PUC's ultimate specification of where the savings on the refinancing would go. So Mr. Harecki testified that the PUC specified uses towards the environmental program in schools, which would reduce energy usage in the schools. That was one of the examples, but I guess I'd like to see from the PUC if they made a specific plan for use of the savings, where that would go, or what they detailed at that time. But what I would really like then, if we're going to consider this legislation, is that before this gets to a session or a committee of the whole, or even another hearing, that we see GPA's plan, knowing that GPA's plan is subject to CCU approval. I would actually like to see CCU's plan that they are going to submit to the PUC. And at least we can, see for ourselves where exactly these savings are going to benefit the ratepayers, and see, maybe we might be able to hear at that point from some of the PUC members if that's likely, if that looks reasonable or not. If PUC has a plan prior to that, that's even better because of the short time that you have cited in order to achieve these savings. Ms. Garcia has also pointed out to us that we have to act fast. So maybe if these things have been thought of already, if we could see those. I'm not going to go through another exercise of promises that we're going to impact ratepayers. And maybe you have, but I'd like to be able to account for that. And that's what that provision was intended to do, is to provide that accounting that we're refinancing. We may have extended the term or done some other things in there as well, but but these are the savings that, or these are how it's going to translate directly to the consumers. So, Mr. Benavente.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I will look back at the record and determine what happened there and get back to you shortly. Please remind me someone so I won't. And we did, you mentioned how we did the schools. We did have us pay for a whole study of all the Guam DOE, which we did send to the legislature, I believe, subsequent to that. And we did some pilot stuff. So I will look at that and I will clear the record. But again, if I missed that, there was no pun intended, and I know that. And again, I think the CCU has passed a resolution on the intent for the refinancing of this bond, and it was looking at the straight levelized scenario. All understanding that, again, like I mentioned earlier, all of these are related towards the end goal of the new power plant coming on the line, appreciating all of those, and try not to affect the base rate. So I can understand.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Mr. Chair, if I could just note then that I don't see in our packet the CCU's resolution or any action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, we did not include that, but we can definitely share that with all the members of the body. Is there anyone else that would like to ask questions at this time? I don't see any other of my colleagues. I do have one more follow-up question. Perhaps this question is better suited for Gita, for Tina Garcia from Gita. The hot bonds, the BPT bonds, and the GIAA revenue bonds were all recently refinanced to take advantage of debt service savings and better interest rates. Did any of those refinancing efforts include an extension of the terms?
No, Senator, they did not.
So those refinancing efforts all stayed within the term that those bonds already had?
Yes, within their current maturity.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I know, my apologies to Senator San Agustin. He did have something to go to at previously scheduled at 2 p.m. that he had to step out for. I apologize that it took so long. We weren't able to allow him to have a closing, but he did inform me that he's okay with ending this public hearing without his any closing from him. He gave his opening statement. With that, all testimony has been heard on this, and we have allowed the opportunity for questions to be asked. And unless anyone has anything else to add and there's no further questions or comments, this will conclude our discussions on Bill 212-36 COR. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 906 of the DNA Building in Hagåtña. You may also send your statements to us at clyntridgell@guamlegislature.org. That's CLYNTRIDGELL@guamlegislature.org, or you can send it by fax to 475-4768. Thank you all for your participation today. This virtual public hearing is adjourned. It is 2:28 p.m.